switched at birth. The night Chuka and Daniel were born, the world had no idea that two lives, bound by blood but separated by deceit, would forever be changed. It was a cold evening in Lagos when the cries of two newborns echoed through the sterile hallways of a high-end private hospital. One child, born to the elegant wife of Chief Adewale Akintoye, the city's wealthiest mogul, was destined for a life of luxury. The other, born to Ngozi, the wife of Tom Okoro, the chief's trusted personal assistant, was meant to live in modesty, as the son of a humble worker. But fate, twisted and unforgiving, had other plans that night. Tom Okoro had always been a man with dreams larger than his station. To him, life had always felt like a game, and the rules of that game were simple: wealth was power, and power was everything. He had served the Akintoye family for years, dedicating his life to ensuring their success, yet in the deepest recesses of his heart, he had always believed that he and his family were deserving of more. And on that fateful night, Tom saw his chance. He and Ngozi had just welcomed their son into the world when fate handed Tom a cruel gift, a chance to change everything. It was in the quiet of the hospital corridor, when the nurses weren't paying attention, that Tom made his decision. The babies, swaddled in their blankets, lay so peacefully in their cribs. But Tom knew that one of these children, the one born into luxury, held the key to the life he had always dreamed of. In that instant, Tom switched the babies. He didn't hesitate. He couldn't. If he could raise the chief's child as his own, he could give his son the future he never had. His son, Daniel, would inherit the wealth, the status, the empire, everything Tom could never touch. And Chuka, the son born into greatness, would grow up far from his real family, unknown to the man who was meant to be his father. When Ngozi, unaware of the exchange, held her son, she never imagined that this child was not truly hers. In a matter of moments, everything had been turned upside down. And so, Tom took his son, Daniel, back to their modest home, while the Akintoye family, unaware of the deception, took home the child meant for them. Years passed. The families carried on with their lives, each with a son who seemed to belong, yet neither truly knew their rightful place. Daniel, raised by Tom and Ngozi, grew into a young man of ambition. He excelled in everything he did, at school, in business, but something always felt incomplete. Deep within, Daniel felt an unspoken hunger, an unnameable void. He didn't know why, but there was always a gnawing feeling that he didn't belong in the life that was presented to him. The wealth his family had never fully made sense to him. He dreamed of something greater, though he didn't know what that something was. Meanwhile, Chuka, the boy raised as Chief Akintoye's son, grew up in a world of opulence but lacked what Daniel had, a sense of belonging. The Akintoye household was cold, more like a business arrangement than a family. His mother, the chief's wife, was distant, and his father, the great mogul, was too focused on building his empire to truly see his son. Chuka had everything a boy could dream of: fancy cars, a future in the business, endless possibilities, but what he didn't have was the warmth of love. It wasn't until they were both in their mid-20s, both successful in their own right, that fate allowed their paths to cross in the most unlikely of ways. It happened at an extravagant gala hosted by the Akintoyes, where Chuka had come to represent his family's interest. Daniel, now working for the Akintoye family in a capacity he never imagined, was also present. The two men locked eyes across the crowded ballroom, and for the briefest of moments, everything around them blurred. There was a feeling, an undeniable pull, as if they had met before. Chuka felt it, but he couldn't explain it. He walked towards Daniel, a stranger but somehow familiar. "Do we know each other?" Chuka asked, his voice soft yet searching. Daniel stared back, puzzled, yet something inside of him stirred. "I don't think so. But you look like someone I should know." The two men stood there, looking at each other as if trying to solve a riddle they didn't have the answers to. It was then that Daniel mentioned the name of his parents, Tom and Ngozi Okoro. The moment those names fell from his lips, Chuka's world shifted. A spark of recognition ignited within him. Ton. Okoro. The name echoed in his mind like a haunting whisper from the past. Chuka knew of Ton. He was the chief's trusted assistant, the man who had always been around, yet kept a distance. But why did it feel like this moment was significant? The conversation spiraled from casual curiosity to something much more profound. Daniel shared stories of his upbringing, of his parents, and of his feeling that something had always been off in his life. Chuka listened, his heart pounding faster with each passing word. And then, like the breaking of a storm, the truth came crashing down. They were brothers. Separated at birth. Switched in that very hospital on that cold night. The world Daniel had lived in was never meant for him. The life Chuka had lived was never meant to be his. The revelation hit them both with the force of a tidal wave. They were brothers. Two sides of the same coin, each born into a world of privilege and power, yet raised in two completely different worlds. Chuka, raised by Ton's family, had been kept from his true heritage. Daniel, raised by the Akintoyes, had been groomed for a life that was never his. Chuka's heart sank as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Everything, the coldness of his upbringing, the distant love from his parents, the hollow sense of entitlement, it all made sense now. Daniel's mind raced too. All the dreams of something more, all the dissonance he had felt, it was because he was not where he was supposed to be. The years of manipulation and betrayal came to light, and with it, the devastating cost of Ton's lies. Ton had taken everything from them. His deception had stolen not just the lives of two young men, but the essence of what made them whole. The consequences were swift. Ton's life unraveled before his eyes. The Akintoyes, heartbroken and furious, severed ties with him. His son, the boy he had raised as his own, turned his back on him in disbelief. Chuka, now fully aware of his true identity, took his rightful place in the Akinto Empire, but it was a victory tainted with the pain of betrayal. And Daniel. He walked away from the life he had known, determined to build something on his own, free from the ghost of a past that was never meant for him. The price of deception was more than wealth or power, it was the tearing apart of souls, the breaking of family bonds that could never be mended. In the end, both brothers learned that the greatest inheritance wasn't the empire they could have had, but the truth they'd had to find, even when it came too late.